Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you with us as we share this conversation together today. And I hope that as we do that, you find it both encouraging and inspiring. And as we head into Mother's Day weekend, we want to honor all the women in our lives and all the women in our church and community who've been influential for us. And so I'm really excited to have three women from our church with us, and they're going to introduce themselves in just a minute. And we're just going to take some time just to chat together. And I hope you find this conversation encouraging as you listen. Before I have our esteemed guests introduce themselves, I just want to share something that I often say at Mother's Day when we gather for church at this time of year. We often talk at the Well about how times like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas can be emotional amplifiers for us. And so if you have positive relationships, if things are going well in the life of your family and you just feel great about your mom and being a mom to your kids, and just kind of everything's going well, then this is a real season where all those positive emotions get amplified, and it's just a great kind of time of celebration and joy. But we also recognize that for some of us, these can be hard times for us. Maybe we are experiencing grief around the loss of a mom, or maybe we've experienced just difficulty. We've wanted to have kids, but haven't been able to. Or maybe we're just happily single and we feel left out at times like this. So we just kind of want to acknowledge maybe the very places that we're at and that you come from, even as you maybe watch this video. And just really also just kind of say, hey, it's our desire just to honor and celebrate all the women in our lives and in our community and in our church. And so whether you're married or single or a mom or not, like we're just really thankful for your life and faith and influence in our relationships. And so we hope that this is an encouragement and a blessing for you, no matter kind of what emotional place that you find yourself in. So glad to have you along for the ride today, and just look forward to this conversation together and how we might be encouraged. So I'm glad to be joined by three women from the Well, from our church. And we're just going to start. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we're just going to talk for a few minutes just about some of the women who are influential in our lives, and maybe some of the things that have encouraged us in our faith journey. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation together. So first, before we go any farther, let's have them just take a minute just to introduce themselves and give us their name and a little bit of their background, and then we'll dive in with some more questions. So maybe Jane, would you just go first and just share with us a little bit about yourself?
My name's Jane. I've been coming to the Well for almost as long as the Well has been the Well. I'm a widow twice. I have 5 children, 6 grandchildren. I don't know what else to say.
Nope, that's great. Glad to have you with us tonight, Jane. Leslie, why don't you go next and just introduce yourself?
Sure. Leslie Burrison, married to Craig Burrison, have 2 boys, Ethan and Evan Burrison. Been involved at the church for a number of years, and served in different capacities. And boys have been on the worship team, and as well as Craig, and just love our church family. And yeah, happy to be here tonight.
Thanks, Leslie. And Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself for us?
I'm Sarah Kiefer, and I'm married to Zach, and we have 4 kids, Haley, Bryn, Tegan, and Levi. And we've been coming to the Well for 7 years and just love the relationships we've made there.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight. So I just want to start by saying I'd be glad for each of you to share about maybe an influential woman in your life, or maybe there's more than one, and that's certainly fine. You can talk about them, and just an influential woman in your life, and maybe the role that they've played for you, and how that person has impacted your life. And so an influential woman and how maybe they've impacted you. And Sarah, why don't we have you go first?
I would definitely say my mom has been most influential, which I feel like is textbook answer for Mother's Day, but it's really true. I was not an easy teenager, and she just loved me like Jesus does in the most simple way, and it was always constant. And she has literally been a saint uh, growing up, and hardworking, and just everything I've always wanted to be when I became a mom. And so she's definitely influenced me in only positive ways my whole life.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And Leslie, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to chime in on that too, along with Sarah. Of course, I grew up in a home that loving family, and my mom has been a rock in my life, and certainly a great supporter growing up, and having children, and just being there to practically love and support us. And I couldn't ask for a better mom. And I also want to say that my mother-in-law as well, just coming out of those growing up years and having children, getting married and having children, and having a wonderful mother-in-law as well. So I've just been blessed that way. So definitely both influential in different ways and in very meaningful ways to me. So and I want to thank them. It sometimes we don't say that, but I think leading into Mother's Day, we do think that more so, for sure. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And Jane, why don't you share with us influential women in your life?
So I would have to say my grandmother, because of a very dysfunctional family. My dad and my brother and I lived with my grandparents for probably 2 years. This is very emotional, but my grandmother was an exceptionally loving, caring, compassionate lady. And I still base a lot of my decisions around things that I witnessed her do and the way that she lived her life. At one point, she was the longest standing member of the Salvation Army in Cambridge, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I would have to say my grandmother.
Yeah, interesting that we all talked about people who we've had, no surprise, a long-standing relationship with, and how their kind of faithfulness over a long period of time has kind of had an impact for us. So yeah, that's kind of a commonality I heard as each of you were talking. Also curious to just chat tonight about what is there a passage in the Bible, or maybe even a woman in the Bible, that's been kind of a meaningful person or example, or a meaningful passage for you kind of in your own faith journey? And so Jane, why don't we start that question with you?
So the woman that I really like in the Bible is the lady who washed the feet of Jesus, who first cried, because I cry a lot, and dried her tears with her hair, and then she poured perfume on his feet. And to me, the action that she did was so bizarre for that time, and so unique to the person that God created her to be. She kind of really stood outside the box in order to show the love that she had for Jesus. And she didn't care about the people around her, what they were saying, or what they were thinking. She just went ahead and showed Jesus the love that she was feeling in the only way that she knew how to do it.
And for you, is that the kind of the idea or the theme that's influenced you, is just that sense of, I mean, she has a bit of recklessness, right? Like, I'm just going for Jesus here, and I don't care what anybody around me kind of senses. Is that kind of that sense of just kind of abandonment to Christ, is that what you find encouraging?
Yes, I believe that God made each one of us very unique, and I think that we should use our uniqueness to show our love for Him in the way that we reach out to others.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Does that answer?
No, that's great. I appreciate that. That's really good, Jane. Yeah. How about for you, Leslie? A passage of scripture or a woman in the Bible that's just been really kind of influential and meaningful for you in your faith journey?
So, I had a hard time with this because I didn't really have, one woman. I think that at different points in life and different, stages of life and sermons that you hear, certain things resonate with you at different times. But I think what stands out to me in the Bible for women is women who stand up for what they believe in, no matter what the odds, and no matter what the personal, the peril or the fear, what could happen to them. And so, I'm thinking of Rahab, and being, and hiding the spies, and saving their lives. And that must have been so incredibly scary for her, but knowing that, she was doing something that she really felt called to do in that moment, and that's what she needed to do. And then later on, just being blessed and her family being saved. And so things like that, where women are standing up for what they believe in light of, whatever could happen, and just not really knowing the outcome. And so I really admire that. And I was looking at Esther, and saving her family lineage and line. And I appreciate when you speak about the underdogs of the Bible, and how God uses, whether it's women or people that might not have it all together all the time, but He uses them in those moments because they're willing. And so I do think of those women. And I was looking at, I was just thinking about that, and that the thought or the verse that whatever God brings you to, He will see you through. And so that kind of that resonates with me today. And I don't know if it resonated with me before, but at the, when you're asking me these questions, I was thinking, yeah, I really appreciate women that, you might be fearful, you might not have all the answers, but you're standing in faith because you know that God's called you to that, and He'll see you through it. So that's kind of where I landed on that.
Yeah, that's great. Women like Rahab and Esther, who are courageous and brave, and those stories are all the more powerful when we're reminded that women just didn't have the place and opportunity like maybe we do today. And so for them to stand up and kind of live out their convictions even during some of those times is really, really remarkable. So yeah, that's great, Leslie. Thanks. And Sarah, how about for you?
I kind of am on the same line as Leslie, that I didn't really have a favorite woman of the Bible, and kind of the same idea, different stages of life, it's different people and different messages remind me of different things. But when you ask the question, my first thought was my favorite story in the Bible is the shepherd and the 99 sheep, and the one that goes away and he goes and finds it. And I grew up in a really strict Baptist church, and it was, a lot of the teaching was fearing God and not a lot about God's love for us. And so then to look at that story from a different point of view, of Him pursuing us and loving us that much, and I really came to understand that story once I had kids, of how much my mom loves me and pursued me through my troubled times, and how much, I would pursue my own kids. And it's just a comforting story to me to know that no matter where I go, God is pursuing me.
Yeah, that's a great picture and reminder, right? The pursuing God, and he does that out of love, and that's kind of his primary driving motivator towards us. So he's going to go find the lost one because he cares and he loves deeply every single person. So yeah, great reflection for us, Sarah. So kind of another question for us to think about is to say, if you could communicate a message to the women in our church, or even people who might be listening online who aren't necessarily connected to the well, but who might just click on this and watch, what's something, a message or advice or something that you would want to share with women, and something you would want them to hear? And so maybe Leslie, we'll start with you on that.
So this kind of ties in with the first question with the influential women in your life, because what I would want to say to the women of the well is that you've all been influential women in my life. So I know obviously my mom and Mary that was my first instinctual and heartfelt reaction, but there's so many women in my life and at the well that I just want to say that those relationships are so meaningful to me, and that God has used the church body to really build up my faith. I come to church to listen to your messages and to learn and to grow, but I also come because of the connection, and that the Lord tells us to not give up meeting and meeting together. And I think during this COVID time, we can't meet together the way that we're used to meeting together, and we can't see each other and hug each other and connect. And I think that I've heard lots of people say in the past, to be a Christian, you don't really need the body of Christ. You can do it on your own. And I'm not saying that you can't, but I think that what I have felt during these last couple of months is that you can do it on your own, but I'm missing so much. I'm missing that connection, and I'm missing the body of Christ. And I think that I just want to say to the women of the well that I miss you all, and that God has used you all in different ways to encourage me. I've learned, I've grown, I've admired so many women in our church, and I hope that leading forward, we could even have these types of continued meetings, women's Bible studies that, we can just chime in and jump on Zoom and have just a connection with each other, because sometimes it's hard when you've got little kids, or, you're going all day at work. And wouldn't it be nice to have our continued connection with Zoom, or in this way? I don't know. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we've obviously been forced into this season, and I think there's going to be some things we're learning through this time that we're just going to say, we just want to keep doing some of these things that we've learned and been having to do through this time to support one another. And I think you're so right that our relationship and faith isn't just with God alone, but it's with one another. And so much of our faith journeys, we're learning from each other. And so that's a great reflection. Jane, how about you? Something that you just want to communicate to women in our church and community? Something that you would say about that.
So it kind of relates to the story in the Bible that speaks to me. And I would just like to say that to other women, it took me a long time to embrace my uniqueness for the way that God created me, instead of always being stuffed into the box that everyone was trying to tell me is where I should belong. So I would just like to tell women to embrace your uniqueness, step outside the box, and don't be afraid to be different. Just be yourself and love people that way.
Yep, that's great, Jane. Great message for us, great encouragement. How about you, Sarah? What's something that you would say is you'd want to share with other women?
I think a lot of times women are really quick to be encouraging to everyone else around them, but then forget to repeat the same message back to themselves. And so I just think now is a really good time to be gentle with yourself. We are living in very strange times, and can be really lonely times for some people and really awesome times for others. And I just think it's really important to be kind to yourself. If you're having a bad day or you're having a great day, just take one day at a time.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to offer grace to others than it is to ourselves, and so we need to be maybe willing to kind of turn that around and give the grace to ourselves that we're so often maybe willing to give to others. So yeah. I just want to say thanks to each of you, Sarah, Leslie, Jane, just for joining us tonight, and just for sharing just kind of in this informal way some of your thoughts as we head into Mother's Day weekend. Just on behalf of The Well, we do want to just wish you a great weekend as you celebrate Mother's Day. And as I mentioned kind of at the outset, whatever this might look like for you, if this is a particularly hard weekend, we're sensitive to that. We want to be sensitive to that, and know that we want to offer our support and encouragement to you. And for those for whom this is a time to really celebrate with your families, just pray that in whatever unique way that has to look like this year, that you're able to do that and just feel a sense of honor for all the women at our church and in our community as we head into Mother's Day weekend. Thanks for taking the time to just watch this video. Would also love to have you join us Sunday mornings. We're meeting online during this season, and so 10 o'clock online. You can just watch us on Facebook Live, and we post those videos to YouTube afterward as well. And so you'd be welcome, if you're watching, to jump on then and watch at that point as well. So thanks, and if you have any feedback for us just around this particular idea, this is something we may try in a varied way through this season as well. We'd love to hear that feedback too. And glad you could join us, and take care, each one, and God bless.